Welcome. What is the name of our podcast?
The Texas Poker Experience.
Hey, y'all. Welcome to the Texas Poker Experience. I'm Caitlin Comeskey, and I'm here with Craig Cyr. We're here to break down all things. We're here to break down all things Texas poker, all things
Gambly,
fun. We're going to have a conversation for you. We've got a top 10 list prepared. I'm going to send it over to my friend Craig, who's going to tell you a little bit about why you should care what he thinks about anything. Good luck with that, honey.
The idea for this podcast, we're going to keep things pretty lighthearted. We're not going to get into the weeds as far as, strategy. There's plenty of things out there if you want to get better at poker.
I don't sign on to that immediately. We have conflict because I want to have several poker beefs that we establish here on the podcast. Was that not part of your plan ever?
Beefs are encouraged, just not over strategy. Just not over strategy.
Oh, no, I don't give a shit about game theory.
We also want to take our time to kind of spotlight what's going on currently in Texas, what has been going on for about 6 years now. That is the public or the, I guess, private clubs, these social clubs, a little bit about Texas law and why these social clubs exist and what the poker scene is like here in Texas.
Yeah, I believe the first legal card room that opened was here in Austin, down on Manchac, was the Texas Card House. Mm-hmm. It was a good buddy of mine, Sam Von Kennel, who was the pioneer of the social model area where you're paying seat rentals as opposed to raking the game.
Correct. And even in the early stages, it wasn't even seat rental. It was like a one-time fee. You could pay by the day, by the month, or even by the year, play as much poker as you want, and it was just a one-time fee. And I remember people talking about that when it first came to be, when pretty much every poker game that you could find in town, and there was a lot of them, they were all underground poker games, taking a rake. And when that first opened up, everyone thought it was seedy and it was really dicey. And everyone said, don't worry,
not wrong,
they're going to get shut
wrong.
down in a week, and everybody thought, no, there's just no way. And after about a couple of years of that being in operation and doing quite well, they built a larger location. That's Texas Card House North here in Austin. And of course, Texas Card House has branched out. They've got Rio Grande Valley, they've got Houston, they've got Dallas, for the time being. We can discuss that a little bit later.
Yeah.
But after that, everyone realized, you know what? This is an unregulated space, and it's kind of like the Wild West. And anybody with a few bucks and some card tables, if they have a network of players and dealers and whatever, and they can put a staff together and get themselves a physical location, they can open up a card club. There's absolutely nothing stopping them. There's no regulatory body. There's nothing, there's no license that they need to have in order to do this. They just need the passion and the money to do it.
And it's interesting how it'll evolve and if it'll eventually be like strip clubs where it is highly regulated and there's zoning requirements. And that is some of the pushback in Dallas we mentioned. There may be some troubles in the water there because I think their district, they're in Farmers Branch at an old Sam Moon like jewelry location or whatever. And I think they're trying to revoke their authorization to operate there. I think it's just so much more conservative and religious up in Dallas. I grew up in Dallas, and it makes sense to me that would be the first city to kind of push back, and it'll be interesting to see how we evolved. But that's so cool that you were there on the ground floor of the genesis of Texas poker. What had brought you to Austin at that point?
Well, I actually moved to Austin to play golf. That was my passion as a kid. Well, my true passion as a kid was baseball, but I grew up in a really small town and we lost our baseball team. So I started playing golf literally by default and wanted to turn pro and do that. And I needed a warmer climate. I grew up in New Hampshire. So I moved to Austin, had a job at a private country club in Steiner Ranch, and met a lot of people. And when I finally was ready to put that golf dream to bed, I've always played poker. I've always enjoyed it. I've played for 25 years at this point. And even before like the moneymaker boom and all that stuff, I've always enjoyed it. I've never been excellent at it, but I am a winning player. But, I got all my friends to play in high school and whatnot. So, I just started to meet some of these guys at this country club that like to play poker. And I asked them where they play, and they just, whenever. And they would play on somebody's dining room table, random pop-up games at someone's house. And so I asked if there'd be interest, and I started a poker game just at this private country club, and no rake, just kind of play, and I would deal it. I still deal some poker here and there, and so I have pretty extensive experience in that. But that was my real foray into poker in Austin was starting that game at that golf club, and that still runs today. Of course, I don't deal it, but occasionally I get to go and play in it.
Oh, Lord, what did you do to get kicked out? Spill the tea, hunty.
Well, I took a real job. I stopped, working at the golf club, and I guess they didn't want someone running their gambling operation that didn't actually work there.
Fair enough.
But yeah, what about you? What's your poker background? How did you end up where you are today?
So I went to NYU after high school. I grew up in Dallas, as I said before, and I studied acting. I moved to LA after graduating, and I pursued comedy, and I was a touring burlesque host and performer for several years. And then I had just a personal crisis that brought me back to Texas to be where my family was. My brother had gone to UT, so my family had relocated to Austin, and while I was kind of, getting my life back on my feet, I started playing in these card rooms. So in 2018 was the first time I played in a Texas card room at the North Austin Texas Card House location. And I was just a 1-2 player that would play on my day off. And I was in a hard time in my life. So I didn't really talk to anyone, ironically. And people that know me now to be, very gregarious and outgoing at the table, they're like, I remember back when you just would have this sourpuss on your face and would just grind and leave and talk to no one. And I'm like, yeah, I was super sad at the time. I'm so sorry about that.
I definitely did not know you then, and that is hard to imagine.
Yeah, no, it was pretty bad. So anyway, I was working at a hotel for 2 years. I founded the transportation department it's a Hyatt branch up on Lake Travis called Miraval. No free plugs. Edit that out. I'm just
kidding.
Yeah,
no free ads. Come on, no.
No, but anyway, I started playing in some games, and all of a sudden I was making more money playing poker than I was as I moved up in the stakes than I was from my hotel job. And I got involved with some other guys that wanted to do meetup games together and create a brand together. So I made the executive decision to go full-time with poker, and that was at the beginning of 2021. So this is the 1-year anniversary of me playing poker full time. Before I had moved to Texas, I would play on the road. I played recreationally. I was a regular at Hustler Casino. I would go to Commerce, Hawaiian Gardens, Hollywood Park, and Hustler, first and foremost, were my number one stomping grounds when I first learned to play. I don't even know that I tracked my wins and losses that carefully. I didn't really start tracking and realize that I was, crushing the game until I moved to Austin and started playing in those games.
You feel like you were a winning player though when you were a recreational player?
In LA, I don't know.
Break even maybe.
Yeah, again, I didn't track it. I was so terrible with money and just my life in general back then. Fly by the seat of my pants.
Let's go back to the first time that you went to Texas Card House in North Austin. That was your first time at one of these private social clubs.
I might have been to Full House once on Palmer. That might have been the first one, but I have very fuzzy memories. I don't really remember the experience.
So if I ask you to remember the experience, probably not going to go very well.
No, it's
because I think a lot of people, the first time they walk into one of these clubs, I'm trying to remember the first time that I went to one. It may have been Texas Card House North. It might have been Full House. I actually can't even remember which one was the first one that I went to, but it's different. And we're going to talk more about that, what makes them different. We'll actually get to it in our top 5. We're going to have a top 5 list.
Yeah, let's get into our top 5.
We'll have a top 5 list every podcast, but we'll get into that. But a lot of people, the first time they walk in, it's such a different experience, and that's really what we're here to talk about is what makes, I mean, we're not going to focus exclusively on the card clubs because there is poker outside of the card clubs still to this day in Texas. There's plenty of it, and we'll talk about that as well. But definitely want to focus on those card clubs and talk about what is making poker in Texas so great right now. So if you want, we can jump into the top 5. So counting backwards.
Yep. These are the top 5 things that make Texas poker so special.
So special, so different, and so great. So number 5, we're starting with the card clubs. They work on a time charge model, and money cannot come off of the table. That's part of the law. And so even in some games, some higher stakes games in other places, casinos and whatnot,
Yeah,
that
for
work on a
instance,
time
the
charge.
510 at the Bellagio, and I think the Aria, you do a $7 per half hour time drop rather than a percentage rate.
So
of
every
the
time the
pot.
dealer changes, they come in, you give them you give them $7, but that money's still coming off of the table. It's not getting raked out of the pots, but it's still coming off of the table. So if there's 9 players in that game, that's $63 just comes off the table every time there's a dealer change. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but over 10 hours, I mean, that's $126. That's $1,260 that comes off the table in 10 hours if you play like a 10-hour session. That's
Yeah.
$1,260 that can't be won because it's gone. In the card club model, if someone plays for 10 hours, say at the lodge where it's $10 an hour, they pay their membership fee, which is nominal. But when they're out the door, the lodge says, you owe us $100. You can pay with a credit card, you can whatever. But every time the dealer changes, no money comes off the table. Every time a pot is played, no money comes off the table. That money stays on the table the entire game.
So much so that when I first started playing in the card rooms, they were still using tip chips. They've gone away with tip chips. I think that they've decided that's sort of an arbitrary gesture that they're not going to, it's, the whole house of cards is not going to come tumbling down over the way we're tipping the dealers. So if any money is leaving the table, it's just what is being given to the dealer. And players' checks now is allowed in
Right.
almost
And if you
100% of the card rooms.
If you assume $1 a hand or, whatever, roughly $1 a hand, maybe 30 hands an hour, which I think would probably be fast. But 30 hands an hour, you're talking $30 an hour leaving the table versus, $130 an hour leaving the table. It makes quite a difference in the action. Number 4, poker has just always kind of been iconic in Texas. It's
Iconically Texas, yes.
Yes, it's just been a pastime for years and years and years.
The game is called Texas Hold'em.
Is it?
I'm not confident,
Is that what they call it?
actually. No. In LH is what I've been told.
I'm sure miss some, but I mean, of course, you think of Doyle Brunson, you think of Amarillo Slim, you think of, just some of the godfathers of poker, just these iconic people that have just achieved things in poker before poker was cool. And they were playing in smoky back rooms in Texas. That's where the game came from. And it's kind of branched out the rest of the world.
And it's got that like old West mystique, Americana vibe, like Mel Gibson on the steamboat in Maverick.
People really, really love it. And the thing that I've noticed about people in Texas specifically, if they don't play poker, but they stumble into a poker game, like at somebody's house or whatever, they just show up with a friend that plays, they want to play because they can see that people are having fun. And poker is just one of these, the psychological warfare. I think people are really, really into it. They have no idea what they're getting into if they've never played, but it's just, you can tell people that don't play poker, they really want to play. They're dying to get into the game.
Yeah, it's the romantic element.
Right. Right. Number 3, I have no casinos. There's no casinos in Texas. Technically there's one, and it's down on the border. It's far from all the cities.
Yeah.
And it is...
if you dot your I's and cross your T's and you want to legally gamble, the option in Texas right now is poker, end of list.
Right.
In Vegas, you can get down with the Baccarat, the Pai Gow, the Ultimate Texas Hold'em, the Blackjack, the Roulette, the Craps. There's so
even
many ways.
Even a slot machine.
Yeah. Oh, well, first and foremost. And those will show up occasionally in Texas at drug stops or some of the poker clubs even, but it's not a thing.
Yeah, it's not the same experience that you get at a full-on casino. So if you have someone that just has a, taste for gambling, they love to just get out and have a little bit of action, poker is really their outlet. So that kind of is what makes the games so great here, both the underground games and the card clubs. I mean, it's just people just, if they want to play poker or if they want to gamble, that's what they're doing. They're going out to play poker.
100%.
If they want to, fiddle with some chips and put some cash on the table and take their chances.
Feel like a real rock star.
Yeah. Number 2, the double board bomb pot.
Dun, dun, dun. Gosh, I love bomb pots.
I can remember watching, I believe it was one of Brad Owen's vlogs, the first time that he played a bomb pot. I remember thinking, what the hell is that? And the infancy of bomb pots was everybody gets 2 cards. There's just no preflop action. So you put an ante in, depending on the stake of game you're playing. If you're playing 1-2, just everyone throws in $5 and you go straight to the flop. So there's no preflop action. It's very hard to range people. It is kind of all over the place, and hence the name. It's a bomb. You have no idea what the aftermath of that thing is going to be. And so it was interesting But of course, leave it to Texas to just take it to another level. They decide, you know what? Why just one board? Let's do two.
What if we
and let's
double
split
the
the pot?
fun?
And that way, it's a completely different game, and you definitely want to make sure that you have some sort of capability to win both, or at the very least, have one completely locked up.
No, and it was so quickly how it ramped up. Like I remember playing mostly at Texas Card House, and it was just like the Hold'em bomb pots. We played them like on the dealer change. They were for $5. They would get kind of crazy every now and then, but like not all the time. But people loved them. And then when they introduced Omaha bomb pots, they're like
Whole different level.
Oh my God! When I was just learning to play Omaha bomb pots at the 2.5 level, I smashed it because people would like call you off with second nuts on one board and nothing on the other, and you would just scoop this like $1,500 pot right sitting down. Oh gosh, so they're intoxicating because like those are the biggest swings,
Right.
and a lot of time those are going to be the biggest pots of the evening. So the people that sit out the bomb pots, like just know you look like an absolute rube because that's where the money is moving, honey.
It's
Because
definitely a polarizing thing. I mean, there are people that absolutely love them. There are people that wish the whole game was bomb pots. There are games where the whole game is bomb pots. They just play bomb pots over and over and over again. There's people that hate them because they think they break the game. There's
Yeah.
people that hate them because they're bad at them.
I know
There's
some
people
clubs
that-
have experimented with even capping them at like a max loss per player. I know some of the high-end games that I've organized and played in, particularly at Palm Social, we capped the max loss per player at 1,500. So the pots, if like 3 or 4 people are involved, they can still get pretty massive. But a lot of times you are capping out at that 15, and people would hate it. But it's like, you know, you got to protect
You're keeping the game together.
You got to protect the game. And like, if you're curating games to invite people that are juicy and action players, you don't want them to overextend themselves. And on these bombs, like people really just, they don't know how to play them. Either they're not an Omaha player, they don't understand the concept of there being 2 boards, like they're potting it immediately out of position straight out the gate when they just have a straight on one board and jack shit on the other, no draw. And or if they're totally nutted up and their hand's way too strong and they're potting it rather than trying to build the pot on the flop. And it's a lot of people's weaknesses you can see exposed in the
we said
mountain pets.
We said that we wouldn't get too deep into the strategy, but I do feel like that's
sorry,
something
I
that's
apologize.
kind of no, I mean, that's something that's like relatively unknown. I mean, I don't know of any equity calculator or anything, any way to know where you're at on the bomb pots. But I do think that if like one piece of advice, just from dealing them and seeing many, many, many of them at this point, I would tell people, I mean, be nutted or have a lot of equity on both boards. Otherwise, you should not be the aggressor.
I feel like I've already said too much, frankly, but
I mean, telling someone not to be aggressive in poker in Texas is like telling a dog not to bark. I mean, it just
Yeah.
happens. And the reason that it happens, our number one in this top 5, is that most games in Texas are match the stack, which is actually kind of a hard feature to find elsewhere. But in Texas, it's almost hard to find a game that's capped.
honestly, if you want to play a capped game in Texas, it's Austin specifically, you can go to the 1-2 at the Lodge. There are a couple other clubs that offer 1-2, but that it's going to be capped at 300. A lot of clubs have 1-3 games that'll have some players that are buying in the level of a 1-2, but then when you have other players that are going to match the largest stack. So if one player has had a triple up and they're sitting on 1,500, Johnny B is allowed to sit down and put 1,500 on the table, and these games can get incredibly bloated, and the blinds are still $1 and $3, and maybe they're straddling to 10 under the gun. And that's another thing, the straddles. People like to have fun. They're social games, and it can get pretty out of control. But what it creates is this environment where the 1-3, the 2-5, and even some 1-2s that allow either 75 to 80% match the stack at like the 1-2-5 at Rounders, for instance. There's no they get blended, they get the same. So your game selection becomes less about the blinds that you think you're competitive at and more at like looking for those lineups where you think you have an edge.
The
You
blinds
have to know the community
really
because
don't matter at all.
it doesn't matter what it doesn't. It just doesn't.
I wish I could have more than $1, but maybe $20 for every time someone walked into a game. You know, there's one table, it's a house game, and they walk in and they go, "Oh, it's 1-2," like turning their nose up at it because they're a 2-5 or a 5-10 player and they want to play. And a couple hours later, they're tapped and they're like, "All right, I'll see y'all later. I just lost $1,500 because it's 1-2, but someone's opening to 25 and they're getting 3 calls."
That's another thing, like pre-flop action sizing. I know, like, online, some of these MRFers are opening to, like, 2.2x and 2.5x.
Like tournament-sized opens.
Oh, God, no. Like, good luck finding a game where the stacks are not so deep that they want... That's the thing. Like, for the instance the other day on Texas Card House live stream, I was supposed to be playing a 5-10, and a lot of the high rollers, like the bigger stacked players, called out last minute. So to open the game up, they made it 5-5 so you could buy in for 500. But people were opening, like, on a $5 big blind, they were opening to 50. On $20 straddles, they're opening to 75. And a friend of mine from Vegas, like, pointed that out to me, and I was like, I mean, like, to be honest, that's hella standard.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like an understood thing between the players that, okay, we're sitting at a 1-2 table, but I don't care. I'm just going to raise to 15 like it's a 2-5.
Yeah.
Just don't care. That's like a standard under the gun open.
I know I'm going to get calls.
15.
And you know what? If I make it 15, I'm going to be 4 to 5 ways to the flops pretty consistently, especially in a 1-2 match the stack game. They're not going to be, depending on the lineup, depending on where you're playing.
Right.
Like, but I'm thinking of games that you and I have had exposure to with each other. Like, there's not a lot of 3 and 4 betting. People are flatting their pairs on these, like, crazy big opens. And
For you and I, it's a little trite because we've heard it so many times. But for some people that might be listening from outside of Texas, have never come here or thinking about it or something like that, there's a term called Texas heads up. And that means you raise to, like, I don't know, 6 or 7 times the big blind and you get 6 calls. And you're going 7 ways to a flop. So many people, there's not a lot of material out there for that. You're really just kind of figuring it out as you go.
Another hilarious thing that'll happen in Texas a lot is there's a lot of limping at the lower stakes games, not at like 2-5 and above, but at the lower stakes games, there is a lot of limping, and there's a ton of limp calling. So, like, let's say under the gun limps, low jack limps, cutoff limps, button limps. And then it'll get over to the big blind or the straddle, and they'll squeeze for like 10x or, you know, more, and every single limper will call. Like, maybe one limper will go away.
Yeah.
I feel like that's pretty ubiquitous in Texas lower stakes games.
Yeah, now you're playing 1-2 and you're going to a flop 7 ways for like $140, and you're like, what is happening?
And as the
here?
pre-flop aggressor, you're always just like, well, fuck. I guess I hope I smash and I can just smash this flop and take it down. Just what a headache.
Yeah.
What do any of you have, you monkeys? You have queens here for some reason? Jesus, check. You know?
I'll just limp with queens, and then I'll just call with queens and just kind of see what happens.
Yeah.
They're set mining. They're set mining with queens. What's wrong with that?
Yeah. Y'all just like flatting with your 3 and 4 bet hand. Gorgeous girls find their 3 bets and 4 bets.
It's really something that you kind of have to see in order to believe. Like, if you've never played poker in Texas, it's really just, I mean, I'm not saying that there's never a good game anywhere else, but the depth is just, it's constant. It is hard to find a bad game. And as a general rule on this podcast, I really don't want to talk about poker anywhere outside of the state. Like, you could win a World Series event and I'm probably not going to let you talk about it.
I guess I won't even try then.
Because I really want this to be about Texas. But being that this is the first episode and we're really talking about what makes poker so different here, I went to Vegas in August and I played 2-5 3 times. All 3 times, I could not help but think, wow, this is like worse than the worst 1-2 game you could find in Austin.
Yeah.
And it's not limited to Austin. I mean, I've played poker in Dallas, I've played poker in Houston, San Antonio, and I've played private games all over the place. you can't find a 1-2 game worse than these 3-2-5 games. And I might have been just playing at a bad time. I'm sure they still make good games, but like you couldn't throw a rock in this town without hitting a far, far more lucrative 1-2 game than this 2-5
just
game
a game
was.
full of drunk stations. Last night I got called down by 7 high for all the money. Like, and I mean, it didn't go my way, unfortunately. But it's like, I love it.
You were ahead when the money went in.
Snap called me with 7 high. Snap called me with 7 high. Like, these games are juicy. They're super fun, and you can splash around. And I almost don't want to scream it from the mountaintops because I don't want a bunch of Euros to come in and smell like cigarettes and sadness and ruin my good time. Because another aspect about Texas poker is like we're social. Like people will come and visit
Very
Texas
much.
and they're like, shit, when I walk down the street, people like look me in the eye and they say, hey there, howdy, how you doing? Welcome. Or like if you go to any type of social event, I'm sorry, now my Texas accent is like coming out, so I'm talking about it. But, you know, like being friendly, being open and warm, that's part of the culture. So I feel like it's easy. Like, don't get me wrong. There are going to be some miserable, like if you go into the lodge or you go into, there are going to be a couple of quiet tables that are like miserable. But if you, as an experienced player, feeling comfortable, you can put your table captain hat on and you can bring the party almost in. And I mean, I don't know if I'm just special. No, I'm not. Like people in Texas are awesome. Bring a handle, bring a good attitude. And like it is, and I think Wes Cutshaw had written something on Twitter recently that I thought was really great when he's like, quit asking me how to get invited into good games.
What is he doing now? I
think
really,
he's still
really
bugging.
loved his content.
I feel guilty that I don't know specifically. I don't know if he's released a vlog. He's still active on Twitter because this recent one he had went like poker viral, not like huge, like epic. Anyway, so he said, you know how you get invited to good games? Like put the straddle on, be willing to gamble, fucking talk to people, put your phone away. Don't be watching Netflix and have your cans on at the table. Like be a good person. As the pro, it is your job to make the game fun.
Yep.
If you're the one with the edge and you want the good invite, you should be the ringleader of the circus. Put on your top hat, grab your riding crop, and put on a show.
You can obviously preach a lot more to this because you actually play poker for a living. I play poker for fun. But I mean, I try to win, but I think it's so lost. I know a few pros. I mean, I'm not going to name them. I'm not going to call them out. But I mean, I know a few pros that are so antisocial, and that might just be who they are. They're just a shy kind of person, but they understand the math. They understand the game. They're a winning player. But like being a poker player,
it's a fun game. It's going to attract those personality types, the left brain types that like want to get down on the equity calculator, going into the lab, running their sims.
But the concept on them is lost of the whole ecosystem. The idea is not to win today. It's to win today and have the people who lost money to you come back and play again tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's what's, to go back to that Vegas story was, you know, I lost 2 of these 3 sessions and I lost 1 buy-in because when I got felted, there was no part of me that wanted to put more money on the table. I probably just wanted to leave before I was even felted.
Yeah.
I probably played badly because the game was so bad. I was like, I guess I'm going to have to be the guy driving the action here. And I had a guy like Tank call me all in with middle set. I mean, dude, get the fucking money in there. I mean, Jesus Christ, you flopped a set. What the hell? What are you waiting for? He thought I had top set or flopped the straight. I'm like, guess what? If I did, pay me. I mean, that's all there is to it. But, yeah, I mean, when you bust in Texas, it's almost like sad. You're like, damn, I got to go home now.
Yeah, I
that
reached my
sucks
stop
because the
loss.
games are so fun.
Yeah, and I mean, that is another thing. You have to be disciplined about your stop loss, especially at these like 1-2 match the stat games. You have to, you know your bankroll and know where the end point is because the money is going to be flying and it's going to be easy for you to tell yourself you can get it back. And I mean, I'm not one to tell anybody what their stop loss should be relative to their bankroll or what their confidence level in. I've definitely gotten hella deep in games and I've been able to get it back, especially if it's early enough in the evening. That's another skill of being a full-time player is you have to be able to navigate those wins and losses like that. But back to the Vegas thing, I had a similar experience in Vegas where I'm usually in Vegas, I'm a 2-5 player. But the 5-10 at the Bellagio, for instance, is capped at $1,500. $1,500. When I play 5-10 in Texas, half the table buys in for $10K.
Yeah.
I was like, $1,500? These mother effers only are allowed to put 1,500 against mine. Like I can get down with some 510 if you level the playing field
I mean,
for
the
me like
510,
that.
the minimum is 1,000.
I played 4 sessions. I won them all. I've never been so like I felt like a total rock star because I'm so used to these 510s where it's so overinflated that if I even want a shot take, I have to be prepared to put up like $5,000-$6,000. It's pretty dumb.
It's pretty stout.
But it's really sexy to be able to play a capped 510 game. I don't think anybody will go for it here in Austin. I'm not even going to try. But I'm going to go back to Vegas real soon. Real soon. I think I'm going to go for Super Bowl weekend.
Yeah, that's a fun time to be out there. I've been out there for Super Bowl. I've been
Yeah.
out there for New Year's. I've been out there for... Someone was telling me that Chinese New Year is a blast out there. But this year, it's going to be a bummer because of all the travel restrictions.
Yeah.
So that kind of stinks. But... All right, so that'll wrap up our top 5. Another aspect of the podcast I want to do every week is one hand review. We're not here to review hands, but I do want to spotlight some of the fun things and stupid things that happen in Texas poker.
Yep.
So this hand actually happened last night. We're at a private game. The 7 Deuce bounty is on. For those that don't know what that is a bounty that all players agree to pay to anyone who has the gusto to play 7 Deuce and win the pot with it no matter what. You can make a hand or you can bluff. Obviously, most people bluff because the hand sucks. It doesn't usually make a winning hand, a showdown type of hand. But, sometimes people raise big with it, 3-bet with it, and then smash 2 pair on the flop and turn a boat. And,
Gosh, I wish I called down Keyshart with Queen High. I was almost there. It was such a small river bet too. I was so suspicious. I couldn't find the call button, but damn it.
But so last night in this game, it's a 1-2, but as we've discussed, that doesn't really matter. I believe there was an open. There might have been a straddle. I believe there was an open for 40 and then an all-in.
I was the straddle for 5, open to 40. That sounds right.
So someone opens to 40. So just 8x the straddle, standard.
Why not?
And then the player to that player's left rips it for like 200. Mm-hmm. And then another player decides to call. I believe they had limped, and now they're just going to call a $220 all-in, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And now the action is to the original raiser. And the other 2 players are all in. And he says, quote,
to the dealer, to you, the dealer.
I have a question about, I'm not really sure how to ask it. So basically, the whole table now knows he has 7 Deuce. How does it work?
No, it got worse than that. I was kind of like, this is weird, but I'm kind of on to you. And then he slid his cards over to you, and he's like, do you see what I mean?
He's like, this is what I have a question about.
And
I'm like,
everyone's
you might as well
just
just turn him face up at this point, dude.
Looking at each other, and like there was like but nobody had like acknowledged that we all clearly knew. So I just like finally couldn't stand it. So I broke the tension. I was like, apropos of nothing, but just if anyone was interested, what the Deuce to 7 bounty is, it's $5. You can fucking fold now.
So I believe we were like 7-handed at this point. So he stands to win $30, and he is legitimately thinking about calling, and he was deep enough. He was legitimately going to think about calling another 180 in order to win
suited?
30. No. Yeah, I mean, that is
might
important.
fuck around and get lucky with some suited.
So the long and short of it is, after realizing that he was going down a line of questioning that he couldn't really get out of, and everyone kind of knew where he was at, felt like an idiot, I think maybe he did the math. He finally decides that, you know what? I don't know if I can beat 2 opponents with the worst possible starting hand.
Yeah.
Especially when I can't bluff anymore because all their chips are in the middle. So he decides on a labored, difficult fold. He lets it go finally after tanking, and asking a lot of questions. He decides, you know what? 7 high, probably not good here.
Ooh,
So
I
he
got
lets
Damien.
it go.
I caught Damien in a 7 Deuce bluff pre-flop. That was fucking sexy. It was a 3-bet or 4-bet. Action got back around to him in the blinds, and he squeezed. I don't remember, but he made it 320. I'm
And you
sitting
ripped
there
it.
with queens, and it's Damien, so I ripped it for it was my first hand of the night. I had queens. It was 1K. I'm a psycho, just so you'll know.
Not afraid to get it in, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But so this 7
Well,
deuce,
because there was so much action behind is another reason I did that. I think there were 4 players that still had life cards or something stupid like that.
but so this 7 deuce, this guy finally just decides, okay, I've got to let this go, and everybody knows what it is. I believe it might have even been tabled, and so of course we're gonna run the flop. We're gonna rip the flop, and it's like deuce 7
Ace.
10.
Do 7 ace, so that
And
like
the table erupts in laughter.
and like wouldn't he have like had to play the hand with someone who like almost had his like he would have played a big pot, right? Because the other person,
well, everybody was
there was
all
an
in.
all in, but the one who called, didn't Danny call and he had like a lot of money behind? No.
Oh,
And
it
so,
was-
like, he
it was
would've-
your 7 high homie that called.
Oh,
And he
yeah.
did. He had like 300 behind. I thought he was sorry. I thought the action was done, but you're right. There was still
No,
action
like
to be had.
because he was like dough, and then like he boated on the turn.
The turn
Deuce-
was another
deuces full of
deuce, so he had
sevens.
deuces full on the turn, and the table was just so.
We were like
overrun
you
with
dumb
laughter.
Fuck.
Yeah, that was a fun hand. That's the kind of things that happen in Texas poker. There's just goofy nonsense bullshit stuff like that happens, and
And I've never been to a game in Vegas where 2/3 of the table is drunk. I'd say more than half of the games I play in Texas, 2/3 of the table is drunk.
yes, I don't drink, and I am constantly judged for not drinking at the games that I'm at.
Yeah.
And sometimes the game that I'm
Standard.
at, I'm
Why are you
dealing.
being a pussy? Take a shot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but sometimes I'm the dealer. I'm like, I'm the one that's supposed to keep y'all straight here. Why am I the one that's being
Yeah, and
pressured
it's
to
like,
drink?
join the party. I'm sorry you're working, but we're paying you. Play with us, you
Yes.
selfish ninny.
Come on, let's go here.
No, and I mean, like, I definitely play that game. I was a big launcher of the drunk poker streams that we did at Palm Social. RIP,
Great
homies.
idea. I was a huge proponent
They
of
were
the drunk
wild.
poker
We
live
had
stream.
a 7-way all-in pot.
We've got to bring it back. Drunk poker is honestly, that's probably the most honest stream of what poker is. I mean,
I somehow won
little
in
bit
both of them.
overdone?
I did 2 of these and I won in both of them. I don't know how I did it. Well, because I was just, drinking and I don't know how I won. I don't know how. I was so pissed drunk, but especially by the end of the first one. And I had told Sam before we started, I was like, Sam, the moment this is over, you fucking take a wheelbarrow and you get me. I don't care what it takes. I am in an Uber. You do not let me keep my money on the table. You do not let me keep my drunk ass in front of all these customers.
yeah, once
You
the
get me
entertainment is
home.
done, it's done.
Yes. So
Yeah, I thought that was an excellent idea, and I think that's maybe a little bit overdone, but that's a great representation for people that have never been to jump on YouTube and
Mm-hmm.
watch people play poker. I mean, you can do it. You can watch live stream TCH Dallas. You can
yeah,
watch.
I mean there are a
there's
lot of streams where like people
there's
are drinking and it's
tons
drunk
of streams
poker, but
now, but this was like advertised as
Yeah, we're like-
everyone there will be drinking, will
it was
be out of their
a
mind.
shot every orbit.
Ugh.
We were doing a drink a shot every orbit, and like it was always, like we weren't trying to kill anybody. Like as producers
That
of
would
the
kill
show,
me.
we were like y'all like pace yourselves, be smart. Like if you don't feel comfortable, you do not have to continue drinking. But like yeah, we're gonna be drinking. But like we only invited like heavy lushes to the game. Like it was like Brian, Mike, Drew.
Usually people are
me,
invited to a poker game because they give a lot of
yeah.
action or they've got deep pockets
No,
or whatever. This
we
was
were
like,
like-
how much can you drink?
You need to be able to take 10 shots minimum in an evening. Step up to the plate if you want to play.
Yeah. And he didn't shy away from the action. It wasn't like, oh, let's play really small stakes so nobody gets hurt.
No,
or,
but
let's not play bomb pots. I mean, maybe on the stream you don't do the bomb pots, but there was
We
plenty
did, but it
of
was the stream,
action.
so it's like single board. That's still the
Right.
technology of live stream is they can only do the single boards. But it like introduced me to Conrad from Solve for Why. We became homies because he had seen our posts on social media about it, and he reached out to me, and then we brought him down, and he did the second episode of Drunk Poker with us, and
He traveled to play
Now-
drunk poker.
he really did. Well, and to do a meetup game, and anyway,
Yeah.
so he's coming to stay with me soon to grind some Texas poker. I'm excited to see him. He's a good little buddy.
Just make sure he leaves. That's the problem, is people come to play some Texas poker and then they never go away.
I have a second bedroom. It's far away from my bedroom. It's fine.
Does he know what fair market value is for the rental market in Austin, Texas?
Well, I mean, I will make him pay in sexual favors. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Conrad and I are not a thing. Sorry, Conrad.
All right. Well, I think that's probably enough, but I wanted to talk about next week. Plan is to have an episode every week. Next week, you can expect you to come back, me to come back, but I think we're going to have a guest.
A guest?
Yes, that guest has not been chosen. I'm not like
They feel
leaving
like we
it
gotta
in
go with a
suspense. I
name.
truly don't know what it is, but my plans for future guests are people that play in these games. Some people that have honestly never played in a card club. They think these card clubs are weird. They don't like the fact that they're like above board and they're well lit and they're in strip centers and whatever. But I also want to have people that are like have never played an underground game before, don't even know what it's like, and just kind of talk to them about their poker experiences. And some of the people that we're definitely going to have on are just so funny. Their sense of humor is just, I mean, what we were talking about, how some pros don't really understand the social aspect of the game. These people 100% get the social aspect of the game, and maybe their actual poker skills could use work. But those are the people that we truly, truly love. The people that make the game fun, have a blast. They think it's really cool that we've started this podcast, and they were like, before we even got the first episode, I mean, we've been talking about this for 2 or 3 months at this point, and finally decided that we were going to get it done. And they've just been begging us for the whole time, like, oh, can I be on? I want to be on the podcast. I'm like, what are you going to say on there? They're like, I don't know, but I just want to be on the podcast. So we'll get them talking.
The fantasy of having a recorded conversation to experience forever with your friends.
Yeah. And so, we'll have one hand review. That'll be part of the thing. And we're going to have a new top 5. And I will say that our main topic for next week will be the discussion of the YouTubers that are now joining the Texas Card Club scene. And that obviously being Doug Polk, Andrew Nemi, Brad Owen et al. Buying the majority share at the lodge and turning that into just a behemoth. It already was a snowball rolling downhill, but that club is just going to be an absolute monster
Good
now.
loins.
So
I think a fun way to end the show, a fun segment to end the show is to harshly criticize each other for our podcast performance. I'll go first for you. You didn't mention enough names. You didn't gossip enough.
You want me to talk some shit?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
So that's my note for
I'll work
next
on
time
it.
for you. Now give it to me.
I want you to give numbers. Tell me your net worth. What do you make at poker? How much did you make last night? Tell me. Dollar figure.
Are you really asking how
No,
much did I make last?
no,
Okay.
I'm just saying. That's my
$1,300,
criticism.
bitch. I'll tell you. I'll look you in the eye and tell you.
Like, open up your tracker right now and tell me what you made last year, because I need to know.
Oh, annual amount. Let's pump the brakes on that.
It is funny how
microphone.
many people ask that, is it not? When they find out you're a professional poker player and they go, how much money do you
found that-
make? And you're like, I don't ask you that. And
Yeah,
you're like,
that's
data
the thing
entry.
with like dating. That was like a thing with dating when I would meet like especially like tech boys. I found like guys that were like, what's it called? Like they had a trade, like they were, or a personal trainer. Like they didn't give a shit. But like if I was dating a guy with a corporate job, he was like, how much did you make? It would be like in the first conversation we ever had. And I'm like, you first. Like, and then if I gave if I was dumb enough to give an honest answer that it's like, honestly, it's a game of variance and there are huge swings. And some months I'll have like an epic amount where I feel like a king. And then other months I'm like scraping by.
That's the nature of the job.
And then they're like, oh, your life is hard and sad. Ghost.
It's definitely a high variance lifestyle. I mean, I don't speak from experience, but I totally understand the swings, the ups and the downs, and it's got to be something that's difficult to deal with. We could probably have a whole episode just talking about that.
But anyway, this has been the Texas poker experience.
Oh, it's been an experience for sure.
Experience.
You have any advice for our listeners before you go?
Always straddle.
Always straddle in poker?
Why do you think it's funny to make me look like a whore, Craig? No, you're right, my man. My guy.
I just say, don't be afraid to put the straddle on. How's that sound? Is that better? Don't be afraid to put the straddle on.
Don't be afraid to put the straddle on.
And don't be a nit.
Bye.
Good enough. We'll see you next week.